So the next project is here. I've already just pulled the seat and the plastics off because I want to have a look at what kind of condition the wiring and whatnot was in. Currently no spark. So that's where we're going to start to when we start in on this. But before I get into the new bike project, I've always wanted a motorcycle lift. So these things are like 2 feet wide, about 7 feet long. Some kind of ram or piston usually lifts them. The one I'm looking at here is the Handy 1200. If you search for Handy 1200 motorcycle lift, you'll find them all over the internet. But these are cool in that they use a airbag, like a suspension airbag from a commercial vehicle as the lifting mechanism. So I went ahead and, knowing that this is 84 inches, got a measurement in millimeters, 190. So then I know that I got 0.44 inches per millimeter. So now I can measure distances and figure out exactly where things are placed, what size they are, etc. So what I've done is I went ahead and I picked up, let me turn you guys around a bit, all the steel that I'm going to need for the legs. So I picked up some 1x2 steel, and those are cut at 54 inches. And then I got a 6-foot piece left over. This stuff comes in 24-foot lengths. So I've got enough to do my 4 legs. And then I've also got a bit of plate. I don't know if you can see this rusty piece of plate just here that I'm touching next to the plug-in here. There's a piece of plate in there too. I should be able to make these 2 plates, and then these things here are essentially guides. They're almost like a C-channel, but really shallow. And that's what the bearing's sitting, so they go in and out on this side as the thing goes up and down, and the things are fixed on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and get started putting some legs together, and then we can get to work using the new plasma cutter to cut some plate and see if we can't get everything joined together and get a working scissor leg action. On this leg now, we've got both sides, or schedule 40 goes all the way through. So as we take this out of the vise, I'll give you just a bit more of a clear look now is what we're doing. So angle you guys up so you can see this. Might help a bit. So our schedule 40 pipe, going to be in the leg like this. It's going to protrude about this much either side. And we'll get that welded in so it's nice, and you can see there's enough play there now that you can have a bit of skew or whatever, but we don't want that. So when we get it put in, we'll have it such that it's nice and centered and nice and perpendicular to the surface. So it's not like this or this, it's going to be nice and perpendicular there. So I'm going to get all the other legs done now. We can get some of this schedule 40 cut with the chop saw, or maybe I'll just use a cutting disc in my grinder, get those cut off, and we should be ready to get them welded in these legs, get a few pins cut out of our rod, and see how they fit up. Now I've got the legs to a point where, with our little pins, and these are only temporary, the ones that are going to end up going in are going to be longer than these, just so I can get like C-clips or some kind of clamp on them to keep the legs from separating. So, needs to be some grinding done in between here. I just wanted to make sure I had enough to weld to, so I'll get my grinding nose flat more than likely. But as for now, you can see here's the pin inside them, both legs. So now if we open them up, so there we go. And I'll just bring you in close quickly just to have a quick look at how the pins in the Schedule 40 are holding things together. So you can see here's the Schedule 40 with a pin in it. You can see there's a bit of play there, but I'm perfectly okay with that. The same thing over here on the other side. Schedule 40 through each of the pipes or each of the legs, and then this the piece of a pin to go through. So here we see on the inside legs in the top a mounting point, outside on the bottom a mounting point. So these are posts that go through all the way from one side through the plates and then all the way over through the other leg. So bottom and top. And then our bearing mounting points, inside on the top, or outside on the top, and inside leg on the bottom. So we've got our notches put in our legs. Not the cleanest, but when I welded and grinded, will look alright. And so with the pin in, if we open this, our notches should pretty much line up because they should be the same distance from the bottom, and they do. If we look straight down over, they line up pretty good. So at this point, I'm going to put the piece of, I just cut 4 pieces of the Schedule 40. I'll clean them up. They'll each get welded in. And then, as they close, these should line up again as well, and you'll see straight down through there you can. Like I said, they're not the cleanest cuts. This is relatively new with the plasma cutter. I could have clamped one of these on, I suppose, and used it as a template, but you know, whatever. Bit of grinding, bit of welding, this will all be fantastic. So I just want to check on this now to make sure things are lining up well. So I'm going to borrow the pin out of the other legs for a moment. See, I've got my pin here, legs moving, and if I line these up, my pin goes right through. So I'm happy with the position of the bottom on this one. So I'm going to do the same now, tack up the other one, check that out, make sure all is well, and then we can start putting our plates together, get the bottom one, like, you know, installed-ish, I guess, if you want to call it. We can have a look and see how it behaves. So I've got those pivot points installed in the lower parts of the legs, with pivot points on one side, bearing mounting points on the other. So now we're going to turn our attention to getting our first plate, which is going to be our bottom plate, fabbed up. So now that we got our two 18 by 18 inch plates done for the lift mount and the rollers and rotation points and whatnot, now I need 4 pieces of 18 inch long 1x2 stock. So the way this will work is, looking at this is essentially C-channel. So what's going to happen is I'll cut off 4 18 inch lengths and I'll remove one side wall. And that way, this is what our bearing will sit in as it rolls in and out as the lift mechanism works. So let's bring it out to the chop saw and cut off 4 at 18. So now we've got our, I guess, what we'll call our bearing race. A bearing is going to ride along. I'll call it a bearing race. So we've got our bearing races, one for each side of the of each plate. We've got our 2 plates all cleaned up and ready to go. So the next thing we're going to do is get rid of this one here for a second. So now the way it's going to work is we're going to have these attached to either side of this plate. So now what's going to happen is we'll come along, you know, here on the bottom side and open this up so it's like a C channel. And then with those open like C channels and then welded on, I'm probably going to put them, I'll offset them up a bit maybe so they're not right at the bottom but somewhere in the middle or near the middle like this. Say yay high or some such. And then they'll get, just for the time being, stitch welded on one side just so everything's held in place. So now I've got my 4, what we're calling bearing races cut out. So like I said, these will sit on the other side of the platform. And they'll be attached to the legs on one side, and there'll be a roller on the other leg. On the other side that rolls back and forth in these channels. So I'm just going to give these a quick clean out now with a flap wheel, and then we'll go ahead and size up how we're going to put these together. So I marked the position of the hole I want to drill, and it's just slightly off center And that sets it exactly where it needs to be, sat on this piece of plate when everything's welded up and it's, you know, an 1/8 inch up, or sorry, 3/16 of an inch up. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a quick ding with a punch. And then with it clamped together with vice grips, I can drill right down through straight, and my holes should be in perfect place on both sides. So now I just got my rails mocked up with the holes drilled in them now. I deburred them. I got a piece of schedule 40 that's going to run through. So I made it. This is 18. This thing here is, to the outside, probably like 19.5, 19.75. So the way it's going to work is this piece will come through here. Eventually, I'll also go through this side. We get everything lined up with the plates. And so with these pieces, you know, on and a right angle here in the corners, so I'll just use my magnets for, I should be able to tack everything here in place. And then that's our bottom plate put together. So there's our bottom plate tacked up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of rod 2 feet wide. Because essentially what's going to happen is we'll have leg here. With those pieces of schedule 40 put on the legs, this piece of rod, well, a 2 foot piece of rod, is going to go all the way through connecting this lower platform for the bag for the lifting mechanism to the outside legs itself. Okay, so to help my trusty assistant here, I've got the pivot point through on this side. This is all just tacked together. I've got my post with bearings in here. So you can see this is where the airbag will sit. I'll have a hole drilled in the middle of that for the airline to come up to the bag. And then same thing on the other side. So you've got pivot points all the way through. And then we've got where our bearing is mounted. So I'll quickly put the camera back in the tripod and we'll just show it in action moving up and down. So after a bit of plasma cutting, a bit of grinding, using the old metal chop saw, I got my next pieces of schedule 40 ready to go into these pivot slash bearing pin locations. So I'm going to tack those in now, make sure things are lined up correctly, get things tacked in. And once those are tacked into place, we should be good to mock up the lift just with bar put through it for the time being, just to make sure everything lines up and make sure everything actuates the way we really want it to actuate. So at this point, I've got my other pivot points and bearing mounting points down in the other sides of the legs. They're warm. I'm gonna put my gloves on. I just finished cutting these. We're gonna be bearing posts for the upper. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick those in place. I'm just gonna see how this moves around. Now keep in mind, this is gonna be loosey-goosey. I still need to put in cross members between here on the legs. Same thing for the others. That should take everything and square it up. But in the meantime, it should just be easy enough for me to go ahead and pop a rod in against the bearings like this. One quick sec, I gotta give this a quick grind. So this is essentially as straight as I'm going to be able to make it. A couple more little tweaks here without having, you know, cross members and things bolted together and stuff. But now if upward pressure was to happen, you'll see how the legs act the way they're supposed to. So something we're in between the two plates, creating a lifting action right now. Once again, you'll just watch the bearings as they slide back this way as everything pivots on the back here. I'll try to do this from here so you can see it a bit better. So I start just lifting, purely lifting on the plate here. You can see the legs actuated as you'd expect them to. And going back down again. So yeah, so I think my frame is good to this point. So I guess my next couple things I'm going to want to do, you know, I'll be getting some pieces put in place here to keep these legs, you know, a constant distance apart. So I'll put a piece of bar from here to here, a piece of bar from here to here, and I might make it so they bolt on. That way it'll be easier to get apart. But then again, all this is to do is really knock the pins out anyways. So, but we'll see how it goes. I think that might be it for today. I got some other stuff I want to look at now this afternoon, including putting this video together for part 1. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know I certainly did. Because now I got a partially working lift frame. Awesome. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.